So no need to introduce, but maybe I will still. Returning to us is Larry. So among other things, Larry also started his career in the U.S. Naval Academy, and he was on active duty as well in the Navy. And after that, he came to Silicon Valley. So today he will be our panel facilitator. Yes, so thank you so much, Larry, and thank you really for supporting our program for so long. So Larry, handing it to you.
There we go. Thanks so much, Hen, and welcome to everybody who is there, who's tuning in. I know there's a number of you that are out there and a number of you that will probably be watching the recording a little bit later. Thank you for your time to be able to participate and to tune in to this conversation here. Again, my name is Larry Green. I'm a global program manager in RUSE and U.S. Navy veteran. I was a supply officer in the Navy. And so with that, I'm super excited to bring these other panelists along to join me in this conversation. A few of us go way back a number of years together, and I'm excited to bring them here into Google as well. So you can go to the next slide. So the first person that I wanted to introduce is Brigadier General Will Williamson. Will is the Director of Manpower Plans and Policy, and that's similar to the HR function or the People Operations function here at Google. And he's also the Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer of the Marine Corps. And he's a fellow alumni of the Naval Academy as well. So welcome, Will.
Hey, Larry. Good morning to you and to Google, to all the viewers there. Thanks for the invitation and for that great introduction. As you mentioned, I'm a 28-year veteran in the Marine Corps, actively serving right now. I'm originally from the Washington, D.C. area, in 5 different duty stations, 5 combat tours overseas, and 16 moves later, I find myself back here in Quantico at the headquarters. Really glad to be here to share some of the lessons learned from me and to be able to learn from some of the phenomenal panelists here as well.
Great, great. Now, before we move to the next panelist, we're going to do a quick little thing here of this or that. I'm going to do that with each panelist. And so, Will, the first question, this or that, coffee or tea?
Oh, for sure, coffee. Coffee, and we call that go juice, right? So we're supposed to be morning people here, right? So got to get up 0 dark 30 in the morning, but I'm not really in a go until I get that cup of Joe.
There you go. That's fair. That's fair. Great. Well, welcome to Google.
Thanks, Larry.
All right, our next panelist is Iftach Rogler. He's a Director of Engineering and Cloud, and this is super neat. He would also served in the Israeli Defense Force. So welcome, Iftach. It's great to have you here to join us.
Thank you, Larry. I'm excited to be here. I was in the Israeli army for 4 years, and after that, college and high tech in Israel, moving to the US. And happy to be here.
Excellent. And so I got a this or that question for you. This should be an easy one, but I'm going to ask it anyway. iPhone or Android?
Android, of course.
That's the right answer. That's the right answer. Excellent. Well, thank you again for your time and welcome to our conversation. All right, the next panelist we have is Ambassador Ruben Brigady. Ruben is the U.S. Ambassador to South Africa, and he has done he's had a number of amazing roles and experiences, both in public service as well as in higher education. Ruben is a fellow alumni as well as classmate of mine at the U.S. Naval Academy. Welcome, Ruben.
LG, good to see you. Glad to be here. Thanks very much. And as we say in South Africa, Sawubona, which literally means I see you. The best way of saying hi in Zulu here in South Africa.
Thank you. And also for those that are watching, Ruben's tuning in from South Africa, and it is a little after 8 p.m., I believe, right now.
That's correct, yes.
So definitely appreciate you spending a Friday night with us for this conversation. And so quick this or that question for you, Ruben. Ice cream or cake or pie? Your choice.
Because my wife is listening, let me say tofu juice with a side of like bean sprouts. How about that?
All right, that'll work. That'll work. I appreciate that. I'm personally a pie guy. Lemon meringue or key lime pie are my go-tos, but that works. Welcome to the conversation, Ruben.
Pleasure.
All right, and our next panelist is Suzanne Lesko, aka Xena. She's a retired captain in the U.S. Navy, and now she's a catalyst for human progress. Similar to Ruben, Suzanne and I are fellow alumni and classmates from the Naval Academy. welcome, Susan.
Thank you so much for having me, Larry. I'm so excited to be here and be with classmates and alumni. It's just such a pleasure to be in this dynamic global environment with all of you.
Excellent. All right, and the this or that question for you, cats or dogs?
I'd have to say dogs. I'm a dog fan. I have a golden retriever now, and his name is Captain Morgan, and he prefers the spiced plum.
There we go. Excellent. Can you do the pose as well? The Captain Morgan pose?
I'll try it. I do have my Wonder Woman mug here, so.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, welcome to Google and welcome to the conversation. Excellent. All right, so I'm going to get us teed up here just with a quick opening thought to just help set the stage. We're going to be talking about two things in our time together. And the first thing that I wanted to talk about is navigating the ambiguity and complexity at scale while maintaining high performance. And so Google's mission is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. Our motto is don't be evil. Our values or the three respects are respect the user, respect the opportunity, and respect each other. Google is doing a number of things in a number of different domains that impact the lives of literally billions of people every day. Our many products, services, and platforms are top of mind for just about anyone in the world. And simply put, people depend on what we offer. So this is a tremendous opportunity as well as a tremendous challenge. Many in the industry are looking at us to see how we navigate ambiguity and complexities of search, cloud computing, hybrid work in the post-COVID world, or hopefully the post-COVID world coming soon, hopefully. Corporate responsibility, sustainability, and the list goes on and on. And so as I'm sure that all of you can imagine, this creates a number of pressures that are felt in different ways throughout our organization. Now, here's the neat thing. The military has also faced tremendous opportunities as well as challenges at scale and in the US context for over 200 years. And that's roughly 10x the lifetime of Google. And so with that, I want to get our panelists involved here. I want to just start us off by just quickly sharing what are some of the complex opportunities and challenges that you face in your respective domains and contexts. And anybody can chime in.
I'll jump in. I'll go first.
Go ahead.
Hey, the Marine in the room here in uniform, first to fight. So I'll go first.
There we go.
I'll lead off, and then of course the rest of the panelists will clean up all the mess that I create. So we talk about the commonality of the panel here is all of us are actively or have served before in the military. That is, you talk about the definition of a complex environment and complex settings. Without the banter back and forth between which services are best or who's doing it the best, the important part to note is that all the services are absolutely critical to being successful across all domains in a very complex world, a complex environment. Whether you're Army working at ground, the Navy working surface, the Air Force and Space Force above, and of course the Marine Corps. I'll talk from a Marine Corps perspective. That's the entering argument for us. Going into complex environments and uncertain environments, that's the operating environment where we perform at best. In fact, a common thread for us as we're looking at working in these environments, whether it's combat, conflict, or crisis, is knowing that it begins with the fact that the environment will be chaotic, it will be uncertain, there will be a lot of fog and friction. We take that as a given. So when you take that as a given, you're prepared to think, decide, and act and lead within that complex environment. So that's the environment that we're all always prepared to work within. Our current environment, though, the current complexities is that in the Marine Corps is that we've been successful for close to 250 years, as you had already mentioned, with a certain mindset and a certain fight. Well, the battlefield has changed. Our peer competitors are advancing. So where we thought we had advances in certain areas before, it's going to be more than just the technological advances that we need. We need to really make sure we're continuing to double down and focus on investing in the individual. So as a part of that complexity and uncertainty in environment, we also acknowledge that the human dynamic is a part of that. So although I can calculate the range of different weapons or munitions, I know how much fuel I need. I can make those calculations. The most complex part of the equation is the human being.
Mm.
Right. So working in this complex environment is a given, but also knowing that the individual gets a huge part to play. And that's what we're wrestling with right now in the Marine Corps. As we refit the Marine Corps to be prepared for our future threats, are we attracting, developing, and retaining the best and brightest talent to be able to be successful in that future environment as well?
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. So being comfortable with uncertainty and the uncomfortableness that comes from that. And then the human being is the most significant variable. Those are two quick things that I just pulled from that, Will. So I appreciate that. So yeah, I would like to hear from the others. So let's go with Suzanne next, and then Iftach will come to you after Suzanne.
Excellent points, Will. And I agree with you. I believe that human capital is our greatest capability, and we're seeing that across the lines. I just retired in February, and my last assignment was U.S. Southern Command. And at U.S. Southern Command, I led the Haiti earthquake last August. It occurred on August 14th, 2021. And the challenge that was posed there, especially in a complex environment where you think, okay, we're doing humanitarian assistance, direct response, we know this, right? Coming from multiple angles. The challenge that we face, and we stood up what's called a crisis action team, or CAT, as we refer to it in the military, is there's an initial shock, but then there was after tremors. And the after tremors didn't allow our aircraft to actually land on the field and deliver aid. So we relied heavily on our U.S. Coast Guard partners and assets that were nearby in Dominican Republic to deliver aid in the golden hour and the days following that initial shock. And as many of you are aware, the further that window that expands, the less chance of life saving lives happens. So we were very grateful at that time to have that interoperability with our Coast Guard brothers and sisters. We had a chaotic schedule managing multiple interagency teams. We had teams in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. We had assets in Miami. We had what we call lily pad, where our task force commander was embedded. And we brought in a lot of U.S. Special Operation Forces as well to really navigate this complex dynamic space. And through all that, there was multiple issues with rules of engagement. We were developing that almost on the fly, where you think that should be in place ahead of time. But we had gangs coming towards our aircraft and trying to deliver aid safely to the citizens. It was really a dynamic scenario. And I do agree with Will. I mean, it's not if, but when the next crisis or contingency happens. And our greatest capability is our human capital.
Great. Thanks, Iftach, and then Ruben will come to you after him.
Yeah, it's actually quite hard to be after the stories that the students are telling here. I'm thinking about so I'm going back into the cloud in the environment that we are. And there's a huge complexity because we are building platform for many different companies to build their application, build their businesses over cloud. Our solution are running in all continents, in 20-something regions, and the entire ecosystem need to work together between support, endpoint, releases, SRE, engineering. Everything need to work together in order for us to continue operating in the best ways for serving our customers. So at some level, it's a different environment of combat, but when something happens, when something is an operational event or outage, then for that customer or for this segment of customer, this is almost a war for them, because every minute they are losing business. And this is where human capital and able to coordinate and to work together come in place. And without all those different functions, this service that we give to our customers cannot be successful.
Great. Yeah, exactly. And there's different context here, and I can relate, Iftach. We're fighting a different battle here at Google. It's less so life or death, but it's still, within different contexts, the tensions and the challenges are, I would say similar. Specifically, it may not be similar, but in terms of the concepts and the themes, they definitely are. And Ruben, go ahead.
Sure. Well, I think there are a couple of ways in which I can answer that question. First of all, I agree broadly with what all the panelists said about the significance of human capital and trying to figure out how to preserve and extend that capital in the context of complex environments. In diplomacy, in the State Department, I'll talk a little bit about that broadly, but also here specifically in South Africa. So generally, diplomats thrive in ambiguity. In fact, that's an awful lot about what we're trying to do is to how do you maintain an operative relationship with your interlocutor, whether it be a single sovereign country or in a multilateral environment like NATO or the United Nations, even as you're trying to advance your particular interests, knowing that very rarely are you going to get 2 + 2 = 4 in a very kind of straight arithmetic progression. And so just from an intellectual exercise, from the policy alone, that's the needle you're continually trying to thread in the context of often swirling political dynamics. And then also, particularly for those of us that are doing this overseas in foreign missions, like in embassies, having to operate in a host environment that may be radically different from what Washington looks like, just in terms of just the availability of power or local customs or the friendliness or lack thereof of the host government. And so here in South Africa, for example, this is the largest embassy we have in all of Africa. We have about 1,500 official Americans here and their families, roughly the size of a Marine Corps regiment, spread over 4 different facilities. Here in Pretoria, which is the administrative capital of South Africa, then another consulate in Johannesburg, which is about 40 kilometers south, and then in Cape Town, which is in the extreme southeast of the country, or another consulate is, and then the 4th consulate in Durban on the Indian Ocean coast. There are over 50 U.S. government agencies represented here in South Africa. And so trying to ensure that you have a common operating picture and a broad common approach to the host government and to the host people across those lines of effort, and doing it with a smile and a handshake in the midst of many operational challenges it's a thing. And therefore, this question of how do you maintain high performance in the context of that level of complexity is important. Well, last thing I would just conclude with this, and I think it is to kind of foot stomp, as you say, what Suzanne says, is that you have to start with the individual. The human factors are essential. And in all of our work, it's very easy to be able to say, well, just it's the mission, it's the mission, the mission. You know, you got to take the hill, you got to get that product out on time, you've got to, host the foreign minister, whatever. But if your people burn out, you can't do any of it.
Mhm.
And so you have to start with focusing on what your command philosophy is with regard to taking care of people first, and then use that philosophy as a means of executing the mission.
Yeah. Thanks, Ruben. And one major theme I'm pulling out from what you're sharing is just the power of relationships
Mhm.
and how that can manifest itself or express itself in different ways, because different relationships have different levels of exposure, interest, et cetera, based on where they sit in the universe of an organization or the dynamics of multi-country situations. But the power of relationships and prioritizing that is a big deal. It's a big deal. So definitely appreciate that. And actually, that's a very nice segue into the second part of what I wanted to dive into, which is the taking care of people part. And so quick thought I'll share, and then we'll get the panelists back involved again. In my opinion, the people in your organization are your most valuable asset. And we just touched on that a second ago, just with everybody here. But as I say that, I also, especially in our Google context of Touch, I want to acknowledge that, there are some amazing computer systems and platforms out there that can do things way faster and way more accurate, or more accurately, than human beings. But nevertheless, I still believe that the human factor is the most important factor in the work that we do. Also, in my opinion, I believe the critical path to successful organizational performance runs through the experience of good organizational health, or having the team and relationship dynamics as you do the work. And so with that, I'm actually reminded, and Will, Ruben, and Suzanne will resonate with this next thought here. I'm reminded of this old Navy poem that we learned at the Naval Academy. We had to commit this poem as well as a bunch of other stuff to memory. And this poem is titled "The Laws of the Navy." And I was going to read one of the verses from the Laws of the Navy. And this verse is nicknamed the fifth law of the Navy. And it reads like this. On the strength of one link in the cable, dependent the might of the chain, who knows when thou mayest be tested, so live that thou bearest the strain. And so an equivalent thought or sentiment with this, because I know recognizing that not all of us have the same academy experience that's listening and tuning in here, an equivalent experience or an equivalent sentiment is this excerpt that I found from Martin Luther King's letter when he was incarcerated in Birmingham, Alabama. Isn't it an amazing letter that he wrote? But I'm just going to pull out one of the sound bites from this letter that maps to what we're talking about right now. And the quote is, whatever affects one directly affects us all indirectly. And so it's hence the power of one another relationships. And so with that, I just want to bring our panelists back into the conversation. And so I want to just start off. In what ways does the Navy poem or Martin Luther King's quote remain relevant and alive today?
Maybe I can start with that, LG, if you permit me.
Yeah, go ahead.
So both of those seminal pieces are tattooed on my psyche for various reasons and have been for years. You know, here in South Africa, there's a concept called Ubuntu, U-B-U-N-T-U, Ubuntu. It's a Zulu word that roughly translates as, I am because we are. Meaning that you derive your very humanity by virtue of interacting with the humanity of others. And it is important for us to recognize and respect our common human dignity as a way of life. And so when I presented my credentials, which is a standard diplomatic practice everywhere in the world, when I presented my credentials to the president of South Africa, I committed myself publicly to practicing Ubuntu diplomacy here in South Africa. And further, also crucially, therefore committed the United States mission in South Africa, every official American here, to practicing Ubuntu diplomacy externally, but also crucially internally with regard to how we treat each other as a mission. And so one of the things I think is very important in this discussion is to talk about the role of leadership. Because one of the most important things that leaders do is set the parameters for the culture of an organization, in which you make clear what's acceptable, what's not, how you expect people to be treated, and how that matters with regard to the execution of the mission. And one of the ways that leaders do that is not only by example, but also by holding themselves accountable to ensure that they're treating people with respect and dignity at all times. And so, yes, I think one can find the spirit of Ubuntu clearly in Dr. King's letter from Birmingham jail, and also in the innate mutual chains of obligation that the fifth law of the Navy is meant to articulate as well.
Great, I appreciate that. Ubuntu diplomacy. That's a great one. And I think, I believe that could go really well here in Google as well, just having that as a consistent practice at scale. That's powerful. Yeah, others.
I'll go next. Ruben, thanks for that. I love the Ubuntu philosophy. And it's ironic, LG, that you brought this topic up, because I actually had this as one of the talking points during my retirement remarks in January. And my ceremony was actually on Dr. Martin Luther King weekend. So there's some potency here and alignment. Really what I talked about that, when you think back to our midshipman days, LG and Ruben, and Will, you were a year ahead of us, probably yelling at us or dropping us for push-ups. But when we were there and we were in blood, sweat and tears, and in Bancroft Hall sweating, and like, okay, they're yelling at us to do push-ups. And I think it was our classmates, it was our group consciousness that helped us stay anchored, right? We knew we had loyalty to each other. We couldn't let each other down. And I think it started in Bancroft Hall, at least for me personally as a naval officer, and it kept me anchored through the rough seas of my Navy career, and being anchored in chaos. I mean, I've led operations in every continent with the exception of Antarctica. And part of that, that loyalty and linkage with not just classmates, but others, alumni that came through all those various scenarios, and being able to be there to be our strength, right? And we knew we couldn't let each other down. And I think also it relates to like when you're prepping for like a deployment, and I know, Will, you can relate to this a lot with all your combat deployments as well, is that packing list and that mindset and being resilient when the opposing forces are coming at you, and the ability to focus and to take care of your people. Again, going back to the human capital, and like Ruben mentioned about being kind to others and seeing that your reflection in them and realizing we all are one, the Ubuntu. And it goes down again to being in that mindset of perpetual readiness, and being able to be there when your classmates, your alumni, or your team, or your organization calls on you as a leader.
Yeah, if I might add, Suzanne, that's great. For those who are not familiar with the Naval Academy or Plebe Summer, when Suzanne said yelling, she really meant encouraging and motivating, inspiring, right?
Right.
Your point is absolutely well taken. Going back, Larry, thanks for the question about the human dynamic, or our humans, our people. Whatever analogy folks like to use, whether they're your most important resource, your most important asset, or even in a military context, we say they're our most important weapon system, right? There's some expensive and some very potent weapon systems that are out there that are flying or floating, or underneath the water, but the most important and most valuable weapon system is that individual. Again, the most complex as well. That human dynamic, that variable is very challenging. One phrase that I've heard spoken a lot in the Marine Corps or in the military, really broadly, and I believe the ambassador brought it up as well, is the mission versus the people. And so one that's resonated well with me is mission first, people always. So the mission is absolutely critical. We all have a job to do, whether we're developing some new application or some new platform, or trying to keep peace between nations, or trying to respond to a crisis. So we all have a job to do, and it's really important. But if I put myself in a place where I have to choose between the mission or the person, I have not consistently invested in the person enough. If I put myself in a position where I'm choosing between the two, that mission first, but people always looking at investing in, always being relational, always ensuring that the people on my team are appropriately developed, that they have the right skills, that they have the right intellect, right, and their families are even in the best position for them to perform the mission optimally. Another phrase that we'll use in the Marine Corps is that we win battles and we make Marines. So those two aspects, again, winning battles, that's our mission, that's our job, but we can't win those battles without the Marines that we make. And making the Marines is making sure that they are developed. Sounds pretty familiar for those from Annapolis, morally, mentally, and physically, right? And not accidentally, but we're investing in them through a transformational process that, regardless of where the young men and the women from America come in, that we have this common value system, that we have this common focus, that we all understand about being aggressive and about investing, but not just for me to come and give myself, but the institution has an obligation. The leaders have an obligation to ensure that everyone in their formations meet their best and fullest potential. I believe also Ruben mentioned earlier about you have to establish your leadership philosophy. You really do have to set what's important to you and how do you want to lead. And so for the opportunities where I've had to lead or command organizations, my leadership philosophy, the end state has been, at the end of our time together, at the end of this relationship, you'll be better men and women, you'll be better husbands and wives, you'll be better fathers and mothers, that you will be a better person by the time we've done this relationship. Now, I'm a Marine that's in a formation, and you wonder, like, he didn't say be a better rifleman, right? He didn't say be a better aviator or pilot. If we can invest in making you a better person, if I've invested in you, and your intellectual and your spiritual, in the totality of who you are, I know I can help you be the best version of yourself, and you're going to contribute the best you can optimally to that mission.
Wow, that's powerful. Iftach, I wanted to give you a chance to chime in. I wanted to move into one other thing after this, but with psychological safety. But Iftach, go ahead. Any thoughts?
Yeah. So it's interesting. When I came to Google 3.5 years ago, I found an unbelievable company in terms of support of each other, in terms of everyone reaching out and want to help, and very collaborative. A lot of those values that I truly believe in, I found here in Google, and even till date, new people come and we all help them to develop. We hear feedback from the team, and we always try to find how to make it better for them, because usually people are shy of giving feedback, but when they give feedback, it's most likely, as you, Larry, as you kind of quote before, applies to many others. So the 1 or 2 people that come and give feedback, we are doing a lot of effort to take this feedback and make sure that we are acting on it and that we are doing it better for everyone, and support the team and support each individual in their growth as engineers, as people, as in the all kind of next phases. So it's interesting to hear all kind of this perspective from other kind of places. I think a lot of it we are applying here in Google as well.
Excellent. Thanks. Thanks so much, Ibtaj. So for the panelists, we're going to be going to Q&A here in a moment. And we're going to pull up this question and answer platform called the Dory. And so for those that are listening, I know we have a few questions in there now. So if you haven't already, go ahead and put in some questions, but definitely appreciate your participation there. But before we go to the Q&A portion, I wanted to get everyone's thoughts on psychological safety. And so when I hear all the different perspectives that were shared, which I definitely resonate with, there are a number of nuggets that all of you shared. I'm going to personally re-listen to this and take some notes myself and explore how I can apply this within my context here at Google. But the thing where my mind goes to is, it feels like trust is like in a tech standpoint, it's the software running in the background that makes all this go. And when I think of trust, I then think about psychological safety and how to create that in those dynamics. Because I believe that if you have a culture or an atmosphere where psychological safety can grow and bloom, then a number of different things that are impactful can happen. But I wanted to get your thoughts on trust, psychological safety, your experiences and perspectives on that. Anybody would like to chime in? Yeah.
Yeah. So, in diplomacy, we say that diplomacy, the coin of the realm is trust, and you can't surge trust. You have to build it before you need it. And one of the things that's crucial, again, going back to the importance of leadership and creating space for a culture, is that your people will trust you, and they will trust each other if you are seen as doing the work to create an environment where trust is essential. In fact, where it's the non-negotiable aspect. One of the things, this is my second ambassadorship, or what we call in being a chief of mission. And in the missions that I've led, I always say I run my missions on what I call the 3 C's: competence, collegiality, and commitment. Competence, again, we all have a mission. We've got to be good at it, right? It's non-negotiable, right? So we either have to be good or get good, but that's why we're all here. It's why whoever the customer is paying you, why the taxpayer is paying us to be forward deployed or whatever. So competence. Collegiality. I believe that the ability to get along with other people is not simply a nice personality trait. It is a core job skill. It can be developed. It sometimes has to be counseled, but it is essential, meaning that one has to insist on certain standards of behavior towards each other, regardless, quite frankly, of how you may feel on any given day. But insist on certain standards of behavior, especially when you're focusing on being competent in the mission, which can sometimes be quite taxing. And the final piece is commitment. And that is the organization's commitment to the individual and the individual's commitment to the organization. And so the way in which I've articulated that is that, look, we are all human. We all have stresses in our lives. And so long, particularly as a chief of mission, we know about it. We will go to the ends of the earth to help you work through whatever your issue may be. Personal issue in the family, financial issue, whatever. but we have to have, again, that level of trust so we can actually help you work on it. Now, the inverse to that is that the individual, in this case, in the State Department, owes it to the organization to behave in a manner that always reflects well on the United States and on the State Department. And that mutual compact is something that has to be continually articulated and upheld. And it takes both sides, both the leaders and the people of the organization, in order to continue to articulate it so that you understand where the boundaries of community are.
Great, great. Any other thoughts? Any other thoughts on that? Trust.
Yeah, I'll go next, LG. I love this concept in Ruben. Thank you for that. I can so relate from my experience with State Department and combatant commands across the globe. But I had the opportunity, the gift on my short duty as an aviator to be a SERE instructor, and that stands for Survival, Evasion, Resistance, Escape. And what that was we trained high risk of capture personnel like SEALs, like Marines, like Will, aviators, bomb technicians to survive with honor in combat situations. So there's a lot of psychological stuff going on to maintain that. And what was interesting is bringing everyone through that program and testing their resiliency. But as everyone probably is aware, the number one human need is to feel safe and to feel trust. And when your stakes are high, that's where the trust really comes in, because it takes, a second to lose it. However, it takes years to build it. And you have to be so keen and so aware and attuned, especially like in Ruben's realm of cultural attunement, to understand where that could, not happen in an optimal state. And again, it goes down to safety, to being resilient, especially when stakes are high. And also for my time in aviation, the crew rest part for your psychological safety, and being able to get that rest and paying attention to your people, understanding, their families, what triggers them, their state of readiness so that you can perform optimally and you can create successful outcomes.
Great. Now, one thing I'm just pulling just from both you, Ruben, and Suzanne, and we'll go to you next and Iptach after you, is the ability to get along with other people is that's a powerful thing. And the thing I'm also pulling from this is the way to get along with other people. It's almost like a side point of if you actually like them or not, but like just the ability to get along, even if you come from different points of view, backgrounds, etc. And I think that is enabled by just simply taking a genuine interest in the other person's life, and having that atmosphere there. And so almost at like a transactional level, you can begin to build those threads and connective tissue of trust as well as psychological safety. So that's just one thing I'm pulling from this. So definitely appreciate that.
And also to your point, Larry, when you have the transactional down, the transformational can then happen.
It begins to just form and happen on its own. Exactly. Yeah, Will or Iptach, any thoughts?
Larry, I want to thank both the panelists who've already presented on their inputs here. In the way you teed up this question, this is truly the graduate level discussion of leadership, right? This is not just, be nice to people and people are important, but you're really getting to the graduate level here. And so from my perspective, if I can contribute, I think the pathway to trust and psychological safety, if I can give you these three components, transparency, authenticity, and humility. Words that you probably don't hear, that people don't think they hear military members talk about often. At least I know when I grew up, 30 years ago, jumping in a uniform, I was taught to be this stoic warrior, right? And sometimes stoicism translated to being unemotional or unapproachable, right? And I had great leaders. I've had great leaders and mentors along the way who've helped shape me as a leader. But then I've also watched our core, watched the services change and mature in this regard. That this stoicism and this isolationism here, but to truly be effective as a leader, to bring your true and authentic self, right? And that starts off with the humility that you don't have to know everything about everything, right? First of all, we all know that you don't know something, right? But you don't have to know everything about everything. And just being transparent and saying, here's what I know, here's what I can contribute to our team, and here are my gaps. And in my gaps, I need your help to help me fill those gaps. I trust you and value you as someone who has the answer. Let me bring you in and onboard the team, and then you can be a valued contributor. right? That requires me to be humble. That requires me to be transparent and show some weaknesses. And that requires me to be authentic. But what I've also seen is that in being authentic, people are more free and open to be their authentic selves as well, to be truthful if they have an area that can be a gap that can be filled. And then this is when the team wins, right? No one of us is the superstar of the team. It takes all of us with our gifts, talents, and abilities, and being honest about where we need help, so someone else can come back up and show up, and so that the team can be much more successful. It starts with the leader, though, right? You want trust, you want psychological safety. It begins with that leader being humble, being transparent, and being authentic.
Yeah, that's powerful. And Touch, I'll turn it over to you here in a second, but definitely resonating. But I'm also thinking about, and you touched on it, Will, like when mistakes happen, because we're all human beings, right? And so inevitably, especially since we're all doing things at scale, so that means there's a number of people, a number of variables, and a number of complexities that are just within our respective ecosystems. Mistakes are going to happen. And that's when those things get put to the test. And like when mistakes happen, how do you respond? And we'll give all of you a chance to share your thoughts and reflections on that in a moment. But Iftaj, did you have any thoughts or things to share before we shift into that?
Yeah, it's also all this kind of descriptions here and the ways that they're talking about in terms of the kind of army experience. Like just one thought of someone that's been in both sides of it is in the army. When I went in the army, everything is on an accelerated pace. Okay, you're with someone 24/7, 7 days a week. Sometimes come home every few weeks. Okay, so everything is much accelerated, and it's very interesting when you come to the corporate world. Things just take a bit longer, and I think the same principle applies. Just takes a bit longer to get that trust, to get this kind of connection, because it's not as extreme in terms of being together for so long and such an intensive experiences.
Exactly. Great. Exactly. And so we'll get ready to shift into the Q&A portion. But as we're doing that, and we can go ahead and pull up the Dory here or get that keyed up here.